Today, we're going to talk a little bit about healthcare proxies versus living wills. So, a lot of times I have clients that come into my office and they tell me that they want to make sure that they have a healthcare proxy and they have a living will, but they're not really sure what the difference between an actual will and a living will is. A living will is a document that lists out all of your wishes in a potential medical event. So the living will say things like, I do not ever wish to be artificially hydrated. I don't wish to have artificial hydration and nutrition. I don't wish to be on any type of mechanical respiratory assistance. I do not wish to be in a coma longer than 1 week, those types of things. So the living will is the specific instructions that you would give your healthcare proxy. Your healthcare proxy is the person who's actually going to make that decision. So that is the person you're nominating to talk to the doctors, consider the situation, and make a decision. Now, in my practice, I have found that living wills are not particularly helpful, meaning that the doctors don't really they're not going to read your living will. That's going to be what your healthcare proxy does. They want a person to make a specific decision. So what we choose to do is have a healthcare proxy form that incorporates some living will aspects. So what I'm going to do to show you this is go over that in our form today. So when someone comes to my office, this is the healthcare proxy form that I like to use, and it's very helpful. The first thing we're going to do, you'll see, is we designate a healthcare agent. After I, Lauren Glynn of Cooperstown, New York, hereby appoint, and I would appoint my parent, probably would appoint my mother or my husband to be my healthcare agent. I'm lucky I still have them. If not, you would nominate a friend or your other relationship and I put their address. Most important is I have a couple of different spaces where we would put in phone numbers. Now, your healthcare proxy will only become aware that they are necessary to this situation when you are at a point that you cannot make your own medical decisions. Typically, that means that you are either unconscious and not able to wake up, or you are permanently incompetent. So you might be disabled, or you may have a diagnosis that doesn't allow you to think clearly. So your healthcare agent is going to make all of your health and personal care decisions for you in the event that you are that you're unable to. Now, if you get better, let's say you wake up or you're not unconscious anymore, you take over your own medical care from there on out. They do not have the ability to override anything that you say or do or how you want. So because of that, a lot of people think that they shouldn't have the conversations with their healthcare proxy because, hey, if I'm going to get better, I'll get better and then I'll dictate what I want. But in the meantime, there could be a lot of things that your healthcare proxy could do to you that you may not want if you don't have this conversation. You're understanding that your effective date and durability is going to be during any period of incapacity in which the opinion of your agent and your doctor, you are unable to make or communicate a choice regarding your healthcare decision. That's when your proxy is needed. First thing that happens if you are injured and you're unconscious is you get to the hospital. The doctor realizes that they can figure out who you are. They know you have a healthcare proxy on file. They call the healthcare proxy and they say, hey, we need to treat. Do I have permission to put in a line? Is usually the first thing they say. They want to make sure that they can put in a central line so that they can actually provide what they need to in terms of medication to you, but also all the other fun stuff. Your agent has a bunch of powers. So these are the powers that we delineate that we think you should have the conversation. What I tell clients when they come in is you really need to have this conversation before anything happens to you, because you'll be granting your agent full authority to make these decisions for you. Now, the first one is your agent's going to be able to consent, refuse, or withdraw consent to any and all types of medical care, treatment, surgical procedures, diagnostic procedures, medication, and the use of mechanical or other procedures that affect your bodily function, including but not limited to artificial respiration, nutrition and support, cardiopulmonary resuscitation. So this is usually all the stuff we think of when we think of a healthcare proxy. This is the nuts and bolts of they're involved in your medical plan, right? Your healthcare proxy is going to be at the hospital. They're going to be listening to the doctor and they're going to be making a decision. All right. So the decisions that they're making are going to be, yes, we want to treat. This is how we're going to treat. This is the amount of time we're going to give it. These are the results we expect with this treatment. They're going to say yes or no. So you want to make sure you have a chat with them. If you have a specific aversion or a religious aspect, sometimes people have religions that come into this, where maybe you can't have a blood transfusion. Maybe you don't want to have a specific medical treatment or diagnostic procedure. Maybe putting you in an MRI is not a great idea because you have a metal piece inside of you or that no one else knows about. These are things you want to make sure that you talk to your proxy about in advance of becoming unconscious, in advance of needing them. Yes, I can't ever have an MRI. I don't want x-rays, or no, those things are perfectly fine. If you need to do them, that's okay. The next thing that your proxy is going to get is access to all of your medical records. Now, your medical records are going to be filling in the gaps for them. They should roughly know your medical history, what kinds of things you're on, and what kinds of issues you may have. But they should know that up front so they can warn a doctor who hasn't reviewed your entire medical record. Do not expect your healthcare proxy to sit down and read every single page of your medical record. But if they don't know anything about you, that's going to be their best choice, is to go through your medical records, learn everything about you, and then make your best decisions knowing what they know. Just in case you don't have the chance to talk to them, they have the ability to access your medical records and information to the same extent you are able to. And they can disclose that to others, meaning other doctors, other facilities. So they can say, look, she's pre-diabetic, so we know there might be some insulin resistance. If you're going to be going through this particular path of treatment to wake her up, this might not work. Okay. Your agent's also going to be able to authorize your admission and your discharge, even against medical advice, from any facility or service. We think of them mostly as hospitals and nursing homes, residential cares, but they also can be a facility or service such as hospice. The reason why we allow discharge even against medical advice is it could be very much that your proxy just doesn't like the method that your doctor is using to treat you. They could say, look, I just wholeheartedly disagree and I found a second opinion and I want to move them there. If a doctor says, I don't want them to go there, too bad. They can still pull you out. They also can contract on your behalf for any healthcare related services or facility without incurring any financial liability to themselves. They can hire, fire medical, social service, and other support personnel. Now, they can do all of this in terms of picking out your treatment plan and picking out who's going to provide it, but they can't actually pay that person. That's going to be your power of attorney. So it's important that your healthcare proxy knows who your power of attorney is. Big one that we don't talk about these days that I think is very important. Make sure that your healthcare proxy knows your stance on medication and pain relief. I have had a couple clients that come in that say, I'm an addict, I'm an alcoholic, I have been an addict, I do not ever want to be put back on opiates. That's going to be a pretty big direction for your healthcare proxy. They should know about that. The other thing they could say is, look, I'm an addict, but if I am in pain, I'm willing to deal with it. Give me the opiates. I will deal with the addiction stuff afterwards. I've successfully kicked it before. If it's under the guise of a hospital and it's under the direction of a doctor, I'm okay with it. So that's something that you can have the conversation with them if you have a particular stance. The next thing that your healthcare proxy is going to do, they're going to make some decisions for you if you do eventually pass, mainly what happens to your body. So if you know that you want to make anatomical gifts, meaning you want to be an organ donor and give your body to different places, make sure you talk to your proxy about that. If you know that you don't want to be an organ donor because you already want to participate in donating your body to science, make sure you talk to your proxy about that. If you don't want either of those things because you plan on having a full open casket wake and that's what your religion requires, make sure you talk to your proxy about those things, because they're going to be the ones to tell the doctors, look, she's an organ donor and she's going to pass. I know that if there's anything helpful from there that you can set up, please do. And giving a doctor the amount of time that they need to in a hospital can really save a lot of lives. One of my friends passed away recently from an unfortunate, horrible accident, and she was very young. She was in her late 30s, and they were able to harvest, I think it was over 20 organs from her. They were able to help over 20 other people with their own medical issues because she was an organ donor. So it made a little bit of lemonade out of the lemons that were dealt to that family. But if you're of the family where that's not what you want, then that would not have been helpful for you. So make sure that you're very clear, and there's no right or wrong way to do it. There are different things for different people. Also, to do any other action necessary that you would authorize here, including signing waivers of release of liability so you can get in and out of things, pursuing any legal action in her name if you know that someone has abused a person or left them there, your proxy is going to be the person to be able to blow the whistle on them. In my healthcare proxies, so these are all the items. I'll just back up a second. These are all the items, this list that I've given you here. That is what I would cover in a living will, the answers to those questions that these bring up. How long do you want to be on a ventilator? How long is the length? Is it a week? Is it 2 weeks? Is it a month? Is it until the doctor says you're not making progress? What is the actual number? One of the most helpful things I think for a living will, or the idea of giving your healthcare proxy an idea, is telling them your standards of living. When my father was ill, he had cancer and he was getting close to passing, he was very clear that his standard of living, what he wanted, was if there was an opportunity for him to be alive and watch football and eat ice cream in whatever capacity that is what he wanted as his standard of living. So as long as he could do any of those things, we were to keep him under treatment and keep him alive. If it came to a point where he could not eat ice cream or watch football and comprehend it, then that would be when we had permission to withdraw from treatment for him. So that type of a standard sounds very silly, but honestly is incredibly helpful because it gave us a framework to which we could sit and say, okay, is this what he wants? Is this what he expects? Is this going in the correct direction or not? Now, thankfully, I didn't have to make that decision for my father. He did pass from natural causes later on in the treatment cycle. But every decision that we made for him when he was unable to make one for himself was really based on that rubric. And that rubric was very simple to follow. Can he eat ice cream? Can he watch football? If yes, then we're going to try it. If no, we're not going to do it. You're not stuck with the medical language, and you're not stuck with the language the lawyers give you. You can use whatever picture is the right picture for you. For me, I think personally, I would be happy as long as I could be alive to see my kids. I am not committed to, it's okay if I'm crippled. It's okay if I don't have use of my body. I still want to see my kids. So I would be the type of person that would want to be alive as long as possible. I'm also pretty young with really young kids. If I was a lot older and in a different phase of my life, that instruction might be very different. So it's different from person to person. Now, on my particular form, when you come down, we do give a bit of a wish list where you can tell your proxy exactly what you want. Now, one of them is grant of discretion that says, I don't want anything prolonged and I don't want it to be provided if the burdens of treatment outweigh the benefits. Consider relief of suffering, expense involved in the quality and extension of my life, in making decisions concerning this type of treatment, versus I do not want my life prolonged. I don't want any treatment if I'm incurable or if I'm in a coma, versus I want my life prolonged for the greatest extent possible without regard to the condition. Keep me alive as long as we can. So these are different perspectives you can look at. And as long as this is the lens you give your healthcare proxy to look at your situation through, this is going to help them make the best decision of what you would have wanted at the time. I also have stuff in here with hydration and nutrition, because one of the worst things is when you have someone or a hospital that says that because you didn't include hydration and nutrition as a life-sustaining treatment, they can't take it away from you. Hydration and nutrition is everyone's life right. You have the right to food and water. If you're in a hospital setting, they're going to give you food and water for as long as they possibly can, because you're a person and you deserve it. Unless you tell them, no, take me off of it. Now, what that means is sometimes people can persist in a vegetative state if they're still being artificially hydrated and fed for quite a long time. If you guys remember the Terry Schiavo incident, that was way back in the 90s, I think. People basically have been kept alive in comas for months. And what that does to their body is pretty incredible. If you want to look at things like persistent vegetative state, people's toes will curl back. Their muscles, since they haven't moved and haven't done any exercise and haven't done anything, their muscles absolutely atrophy. It's really quite awful to see. But those are some people's choices where they just want to be fed and watered no matter what. If you want that to be removed, though, you have to tell your agent that is something you specifically want. And you will have to put that in writing, because most hospitals, especially if they're backed by a religion, think Our Lady of Lourdes or Saint whatever hospital, they're not going to take that away from you unless you tell them that they can. Successors. What happens with your healthcare proxy when you become unconscious and the hospital needs to get a hold of them? They're going to call the first agent. If they can't get a hold of the first agent, that doesn't mean you're still not in trouble. They're just going to keep calling. So we say put in a second and a third agent even. Add more phone numbers. So that way people have the ability to say, yes, let's treat. And then from there, they call the primary agent you've had the conversation with, and then the primary agent can come in and make the rest of the decisions. But you still need someone on the phone, on the recorded line, to say, yes, let's treat. So give them as many different people as they can that you know are going to answer the phone to be able to do that. Now, there is a protection of third parties who rely on the agent. Any hospital that sees this and relies on this, we want to make sure that they're protected for relying on this. So we put that in here. I also put in nomination of guardian, meaning that if you ever do need a guardian, you become incompetent to a level that someone else needs to be appointed for you to make personal care decisions and actual personal decisions. That's the person, that's your primary agent. This is going to be who you want it to be. Now, because I'm in New York, healthcare proxies have to be executed with 2 witnesses and a notary. The 2 witnesses cannot be the agents themselves, so you can't do this as an interfamily and then have a notary sign. You actually should do this with 2 people that are unknown to your family but known to you, friends or outside professionals when you go to an attorney's office. Usually it's a paralegal and a secretary and an attorney that all sign on here. But that witness statement has to be from someone who's a third party that has no bearing in your estate. They're not your power of attorney. So it has to be someone, a neutral third party. And then a notary is a notary. So this is what we use for our healthcare proxies. I think it does a really good job of combining your living will. But if you do think you need a living will because you don't want to have the conversation, feel free to go and steal some of the language from this and make that your basis. Do you want treatment? Do you want medication? What types of treatment do you want? What types of diagnostic procedures would you not want? And it's easier to put down things you don't want than it is things that you would want, just because of the nature of the unknown. I don't know what's coming down the line, but I know that under no circumstance do I want X, Y, or Z. So that would be my recommendation if you're taking a look at this and just getting started. I hope this helps you if you're wondering what's the difference between a healthcare proxy and a living will. If there's anything else we can do to help you with this conversation, let us know. My name is Lauren Glynn. I'm an attorney. I practice in estate planning in upstate New York. I'm happy to help at any point. Just leave a comment below or message us and we'll do what we can. Have a good day.